Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha. I'm here with our family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad-gītā verse by verse. And today we are in the 13th chapter. And we're going through these verses. We'll get into that in just a minute. We're in the 13th chapter today, and we're going to pick up where we left off from the last class. We're going to start around verse 8. So we have a little bit more to unpack there. Before we do that, I want to just make a quick plug for our India pilgrimage. It is happening, and actually, the early bird special is only going on for another month. So if you're thinking about going to India, now's the time to sign up. It's we're going February 12th through the 24th or 27th. It might be the 27th. It's online, consciouscollective.org. And we're going to Rishikesh. There'll be the beautiful Kirtan festival there. So we'll hit that up for a little bit, and then we'll go to Jaipur, and then we'll end in Govardhan. So these are actually my very favorite places in India, and I'm not just saying that. These are my favorite places. That's actually why I chose them because these are my favorite places. They're just highly spiritually potent, and there's no question that your life will be changed from this experience. My life has been changed time and time again from visiting, spending time in these holy places. So please come, and you can sign up on the website. And there's payment plans available too. So it's not till February, so you have some time. You can just sign up for a payment plan and just pay a little bit each month till it's time to go in February. So that's pilgrimage. Okay, now let's get into the Bhagavad Gita. Popey, before we start, do you want to say our prayers for us?
Yes. Om Ganatimirandhyasa Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Vanchakalpa Dhruvyascha kripa sindhuvyeva cha patitanam pavanveyo vaishnaveve namo namo. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Adaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Hare Krishna.
Hi. Thank you. So beautiful. Thank you, Popey. And we are picking up where we left off, like I said, chapter 13, text 8 through 12. And what we'll do today, last class we started with these verses, and it's a whole list. It's like 20 different qualities. And we're going through the different qualities. We won't double click on every single one of them, but we're going through many of them. And so today we're going to start at the same place and just pick up on the quality that we left off at, if that's okay. So we'll read the same verse whenever, let me just pull it up, whenever you're ready, Shraddhanjali.
Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance.
Thank you. So just to reorientate us on what this list is. So if we remember in the first verse, Krishna asked, or not Krishna, Arjuna asked, what is knowledge? And so instead of giving him, just a list of information to memorize, Krishna gives him qualities to cultivate. So we just read all these qualities: humility, tolerance, compassion, because real knowledge is not simply about just how much we know, just storing information in our minds. It's about how deeply that knowledge transforms the way that we live. And so these qualities that he's listing, they're both the path and they're also the evidence that the path is working. They're the evidence of our spiritual growth. And when we practice them intentionally, our consciousness will become purified, and then the qualities will rise even more naturally. So that's the practice. So with that in mind, let's move to some of the other qualities that Krishna gives us, because in the last class we talked a lot about humility. We talked a lot about humility. And so there's a few qualities that we're going to talk about today. And like I said, we won't go over every single one of them in detail, but we'll hit on several of them. So the first one we'll talk about today is nonviolence. Nonviolence. This is one of the qualities in this list. And at first, when we hear nonviolence, we think of it just in physical terms. Like don't hurt people, don't hurt animals, don't be aggressive. And this is definitely part of nonviolence. But it's a beautiful thing in the purport to this text. Prabhupada, it really expands this definition of nonviolence. And he says that the greatest nonviolence isn't simply, or the greatest violence isn't just causing physical pain, but it's allowing someone to remain spiritually asleep when we have the opportunity to help them awaken. And that can sound a little bit funny at first, but imagine, somebody has a serious illness and you have the medicine that they need, and but like in that, if you have the secret medicine, you wouldn't keep it to yourself. You'd naturally want to share it with them because you care and you want to help them get better. So in the same way, this this knowledge is medicine for the soul. And having the spiritual knowledge, it's not about winning arguments or proving we're right or converting people. It's an act of compassion. It's an act of helping people to get better, helping people to remember who they actually are so that they can naturally live in alignment with these principles and qualities. Because that's what we all need here. That's why we're all here. We're all seeking that treatment. So real nonviolence means whatever we can do to support someone's spiritual recovery. It's just a broader definition than maybe what we're attuned to. And so the next quality that we'll go to is tolerance. Tolerance. This is an interesting one because people oftentimes misunderstand tolerance as just like putting up with anything, almost like passivity, just being passive. But this isn't really what Krishna's describing. Tolerance isn't weakness. It's actually quite the opposite. It's persistence. It's the ability to stay focused on what really matters, even when life becomes uncomfortable. And we can think about it like training for a marathon. Has anybody here ever done that? Anybody here ever trained for a marathon? I've done it actually a few times. In my younger years, I like to run marathons. But it's brutal. Your muscles hurt, you get tired, but you don't quit because you know there's something bigger that you're working towards. So this is tolerance. We don't allow every inconvenience or criticism or disappointment to pull us away from our relationship with Krishna. And I've seen some really beautiful examples of this the past week or so. I shared a little problem I was having at work with a particular coworker. And when I saw my boss get on the phone to clear up what was going on here, the way he did it, it was like, that person had their own emotions, their own definition of what was going on. But it was like it didn't pull him away. Sometimes if people mistreat us, or I saw also actually yesterday, I'm on this thread for these apartment buildings that are kind of in our spiritual family, and there's some people in them that are just like renting. We don't know them that well, but they were like communicating some problems they were having, and they were so nasty. Like just even the way they were talking, it was like just so. I almost like just got off the thread because I'm like, this is like drinking poison reading these messages. But then I saw, one of the devotees who's managing them respond to this person. And it was as if like they didn't just treat them like the scum of the earth. They just like they maintained their composure. It was actually such an example for me, right? Because I have a tendency to like, if somebody is nasty or like a certain way, I'll just like absorb that, and then I'll be completely knocked off. But in tolerance, we're steady. It's not a weakness, it's actually a strength. We're holding on so tightly to Krishna's feet, right? We're holding on so tightly to our relationship with God and what we know is right, that we're not swayed by everything going on around us. Criticisms, disappointments. We're steady. It's quite beautiful because life's not easy, but the goal is worth it. Our spiritual journey is worth it. And we have a strong conviction in that, we really can't be swayed. We can be nice to someone even if they're speaking nasty words to us. It doesn't throw us off. It's quite amazing. And then I saw how it just kind of de-escalated the whole situation. The person actually just stopped even messaging. It was just like, wow. So then the next one, truthfulness. Truthfulness isn't about just not lying. It's about being genuine. Prabhupada would say that a devotee isn't like unnecessarily political or diplomatic. So in other words, they're not wearing different masks depending on who's in front of them. We all know people like that, or maybe have been a person like that. But they're just honest and simple because they don't have any like alternative motive. They're not trying to manipulate people. They're just trying to serve God sincerely. And so in that, just the way that they live and they show up and they represent themselves, there's just a simplicity and honesty around them. Now I've gone over a few. I have a couple left, but before I do that, does anybody want to share anything about any of the qualities I've shared so far? Resonates? Krupa Maya.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please share.
I just want to briefly introduce you to Orlando. He's here visiting, and
Hi, Orlando.
and some of the things he said really resonated with me because he spoke about how we're not trying to convert people, and I just thought this flashed through my mind that I was at the doctor's office yesterday, and she was diagnosing some of my physical issues and recommending things I can take to overcome that. So I didn't think that she was trying to convert me. you know, I just accepted her. I had that faith that she was unbiased and she was just trying to help me out. So I like that thought that it's not about conversion; it's just trying to help others. And then we talked about tolerance. It just reminded me we discussed. I think about was maybe a month ago. We were on the 12th chapter, there's a similar list of qualities that Krishna gives of who is dear to me, and I appreciated that. One of the qualities Krishna says, he who's not disturbed by anyone, you know. So disturbance can come in different packages, you know. It can be, triggering anger. It can be, some type of attraction, But I like that thought of tolerance and connecting that to that verse that we're not disturbed by anyone.
Yeah, really nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. And hello, Orlando. It's wonderful to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Where are you from, Orlando?
I'm from West Virginia.
Okay, great. I think I talked to you yesterday. Was he there when I talked to
Well, that
Seth
was
and
no, that
Cindy?
was Cindy and Seth. They're also
Okay.
from West Virginia, same area almost.
Okay, okay. Welcome. Popey, would you like to share with us, dear?
Yes, I really like the point you made about tolerance, that we're not being tolerant to everything, uh, and that distinguish is very important. And I wanted to ask you if you can elaborate a little more on that, because sometimes, especially me, uh, I think when I newly entered, and even in my personal life, it's like tolerating even things that shouldn't be tolerated.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, so if you can elaborate a little more on that, I think that was very important to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Popey.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, true tolerance actually comes from our relationship with God because we're so anchored in this relationship and it's this relationship that is giving us strength and giving us perspective that, maybe this is not such a big deal. Maybe and when we're happily engaged in that relationship, a lot of things around us that we thought were maybe a big deal aren't so much of a big deal anymore. Right? So that's like true tolerance. Now, at the same time, as we're practicing spiritual life, we all have different degrees of which we can tolerate, which is also a very real thing, like our own limits in a certain time. And so I've talked about this before, we have to find that zone where we're stretching ourselves, but we're not like panicked. So we have the comfort zone where we're just kind of everything's comfortable going my way. It's perfect. And then we have the stretch zone, which is where we want to be. We're pushing ourselves a little bit, but we're not in this place where we're panicked, where things are so intolerable that it's like we're not peaceful. Our mind is not peaceful. So at the same time, we have to honor where we are and trust the process that as we're stretching ourselves in our level of tolerance and as we're reaching out and practicing and following the bhakti path, which is ultimately developing a relationship with God, that as that relationship with God gets stronger, we develop more strength. Our tolerance muscles get bigger, and this becomes more natural to us. So we have to work it from both ends. But I'll tell you, I have a friend. She's very tolerant. I've always thought this about her. She's very tolerant, and she doesn't really communicate when things are bothering her. And what happened was because that went on so long, she actually got she got very sick. And she and like very confused because everything was just so bottled up, so tight. And so this is the other thing that can happen. We can like neglect our very real needs or thoughts or emotions in the name of being tolerant. So it's important to have this level of like honesty with where you are and where you aren't, and at the same time actively try to push yourself a little bit, to be a little bit more tolerant. And if we're also developing this relationship with God, in no time we'll develop these tolerance muscles, and we'll see that we're improved. Like I remember when I first started practicing spiritual life, like when I would go on a trip, like I couldn't room with anybody else. Like I couldn't tolerate anybody else's problems or mess or like that was my capacity. and like now, like I wouldn't even think of that. I could stay in a room of 10 people and it wouldn't bother me. But like, so, so it will happen, but don't put yourself in a disturbing situation and don't neglect yourself in the name of growth because that's not really growth. That's actually stunted growth and that's going to create more problems that we have to deal with later. Yeah. Does this make sense?
It does. Thank you so much.
Well, Kalachanji, do you have something to add to that?
Um, it's me.
Oh,
Um,
Stella.
it's yeah, and so um, we have to be careful of just setting ourselves in the path of, an abuser too. Y-
Mm,
One definition of tolerance is also um, you know, putting a good distance so no one can be harmed. So tolerate from a distance sometimes, and get out of a dangerous situation.
totally. That would be the panic zone. Yeah, don't stay in the panic zone in the name of spiritual growth. And there's resources, that can also help you to figure out where you are in your particular situation. Like if your husband's not doing the dishes at night, like that's maybe something that you can tolerate, as opposed to like a real, that might be stretch zone. Husband not doing the dishes ever, that might be stretch zone. But panic zone would be maybe something emotional, some emotional abuse or worse than that. So definitely, and there's resources to also help you figure out what is what. Because I know I was in a relationship that was abusive and I didn't really understand that it was until I started going to a therapist. So definitely know when to ask, who to seek. Sometimes it's hard to discern in our own lives. That's why we have teachers. That's why we have guides. That's why we don't do this practice alone because we can't. We're not designed to. That's never the intention. Anybody else? Really nice discussion. Thank you all. So then we'll go on to this next one. Let me see what Krishna's exact words are here. He says, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. The perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. And this one's interesting because he's telling us that part of knowledge is continually reflecting on these things, on birth, old age, disease, and death. And at first, this might sound a little pessimistic, especially in our culture. People, if you bring up death, people don't want to talk about it. People would want to rather actually ignore it, act like it doesn't happen, keep on living their lives, and then are like surprised when it does happen or when those around them it happens to. This is like how all of us operate. This is like our default modes, unless we choose to get out of it, which is and choosing to get out of it is understanding that hey, it's actually real, seeing it for what it is. It's like if you go to the doctor because you have stomach pain. Well, first off, it's good that you go to the doctor. Ignoring it would be just like suffering through it. But it's like you recognize something's off here. So you go to the doctor and all you see is the symptom. So the doctor orders all these tests, blood work, MRI, CT scan, whatever, to discover what the real problem is. And then they discover, the pain, the symptom wasn't actually the disease. That the symptom was pointing to something much deeper. And so Krishna is asking us to approach material life in the same way. So these things, birth, death, old age, disease, these are realities that everyone can see. And we don't want to act like they don't exist or ignore that they like stick our head in the sand like an ostrich until our final day comes. That's actually just bringing on more suffering and fear and anxiety. It's like, no, we want to actually see them for what they actually are so that we can address them. Just like going to the doctor, you don't ignore your symptoms. You see them for what they are, and you go and you try to seek some kind of help or guidance for how to get better. So that's where we are in our spiritual life too. There's another analogy I like that's a little bit more visual. You can think of this one too. You can think about it like an iceberg. Like only a small part is visible above the water. And the much larger part, even if there's just like a tiny little small iceberg above the water, there's a massive iceberg underneath of it. And so birth, death, old age, and disease, these are like the visible tip of the iceberg. It's just what we are seeing. They're just these painful reminders that something is fundamentally incomplete about material existence. And what we do, most of us, is spend our whole lives trying to make the tip of the iceberg a little bit more comfortable, like a little bit more successful, a little bit more secure, a little bit more enjoyable. But in this verse, Krishna's asking us, he's inviting us to contemplate a much deeper question. And that's not just simply like, why is there suffering? Why is there birth, death? Why are bad things happening? He's asking, why is there birth, death, old age, disease at all? Let's contemplate that. So let's not just look at the symptoms, but let's look beneath them. Why are these things even existing? Birth, death, old age, and disease. What are they leading us to? What's the deeper problem? And then Krishna addresses that. He explains that our consciousness has been absorbed in matter instead of spirit. And because of that, we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten our eternal relationship with God. And when our consciousness is absorbed in these temporary things, naturally we become more anxious, we become more fearful, we become more attached, we suffer more. So we have to recognize this deeper problem. And when we recognize that, it changes the kind of solution that we're searching for. Instead of searching for a slightly better material situation, we began searching for lasting spiritual freedom. It's like instead of treating the symptoms, becomes like whack-a-mole, treating symptoms, we're actually addressing the root of the issue. And that is that we've forgotten who we actually are, and we're not connected with who we actually are, and we're not living from that place. We're just busy treating all the symptoms, not understanding that the real problem is actually growing more and more. The real disease is getting worse and worse the more that we treat the so-called symptoms without addressing the root. Does this make sense? Does this make sense? So this is why we contemplate on these things. It's not because we're pessimistic or negative or, weird. It's because these are realities of life, and they're realities of our material experience, and they're meant to point us to something deeper. And you can ignore it. You can say, I'm going to choose to ignore that, but it won't ignore you. It will come. And if to the degree that we can actually, see the symptom now, we can keep it from, or address the symptom now, we can keep the disease from manifesting out of control and us suffering even more. Because that's what will happen, it's one way or the other. Unfortunately, that's the reality of material existence. But Krishna has a solution. This doesn't mean for us to get depressed. It just means for us to develop a broader vision. Like, yes, there's different degrees of happiness and suffering in the world. Some lives are easier than others, some situations more painful than others. And there's nothing wrong with trying to relieve some suffering. We do that at the doctor too. We relieve some pain from the symptoms. And we should want to do that for other people too. We don't want others to suffer, even if it's on a surface level. Let's manage the symptoms. But at the same time, don't become so obsessed in managing the symptoms that we forget to cure the actual disease. The real solution isn't just creating a more comfortable material existence. It's reawakening our forgotten relationship with God. Because that's the only place where birth, death, old age, and disease no longer have the final word. When we're living from a place of which is eternal, our soul, we know we can't die. Our soul doesn't die. It's eternal. The fact that our soul's eternal is like we know, we know that we're eternal. And so therefore, all these temporary things in the world give us anxiety. Of course they do, because it's not who we actually are. So we're meant to learn this. That's what we're doing here. And that brings us to the last quality we're going to talk about today. But before we move to that, is there anything around that that anyone would like to share? Okay, this last quality is very sweet.
Can I
Yeah,
share? I'm sorry.
please.
Yeah, I just that was very powerful, Rhonda, because as I'm aging, I'm seeing parts of me falling apart. Just realizing, that we get consumed by so much of what. It's not like we need to ignore our health, as you said. We've got to do what we can. We've got to seek good guidance, etc. But I know that I've watched people who have um, gotten sick, and their entire existence all is about I, me, mine, and they just
Mm,
haven't got the ability to let go. And I'm finding I practice that letting go as much as I can, or and it really helps with anything that's happening to me. It's like, okay, I'll seek the right help. I won't ignore it, but I have a discernment about, okay, something can't be done. You are not going to be 20 years old. You're not going to be able to run that marathon, etc. So I
mm,
just keep on going with this real vision of my real purpose is to try to get back to Godhead and to just
mm,
do what I can. So thank you.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, a life of just over-identifying with the body is just like shackling yourself to endless suffering because the body is gonna grow old. It's gonna get diseased and it's gonna go away. And if we don't really address that, honestly, we're gonna spend time trying to decorate and hold up a body that's doomed, frankly. It's, yeah, so that's what's actually sad, honestly. If we want to talk about being pessimistic or sad, like that's what's actually sad is that misunderstanding because of the way that it causes us to live our lives. We're going to constantly be in anxiety, trying to control something we have no control over, limited control over, I guess. Right? Thank you. Okay, should we go to this last quality? This last one is another big one. This last one that we'll talk about today, anyway, says freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. That's what he says. That's interesting, huh? And this can sound a little bit unsettling, even at first. Like, is Krishna telling us not to be attached to our children, or our spouse or our home? Like, what does that mean? Does he want us to love our families less? Should we become emotionally distant? Stop caring? And the answer is not at all. That's not at all what Krishna is saying here. He's inviting us into a deeper kind of love, not a smaller one. And the key to this is understanding the difference between attachment and affection. And that's what we'll spend the last 20 minutes here talking about, the difference between attachment and affection. Okay, because affection is natural, it's healthy, it's necessary. We're beings, we're created for relationships. So we should love our spouses. We should care deeply for our children. We should support our family emotionally, physically, spiritually. That's part of our duty. Attachment that he's talking about here is something different. Attachment means that my peace depends on this person. It means that my happiness rises and falls based on how they treat me. It means I need them to behave a certain way for me to feel okay. And because I need something from them, I often begin trying to control them, sometimes without even realizing it. I become disappointed when they don't meet my expectations. I struggle to let them make their own choices. And sometimes I even lose sight of what's actually even best for them because I'm so afraid of losing them or losing their approval. This is like the perverted mess that attachment gets us into. So, where affection says, I love you, so I genuinely want what's best for you, even if it's difficult. Attachment says, I need you to make me feel a certain way, more secure. So I need you to be who I want you to be. And when our love becomes driven by our own emotional needs, that's where it really becomes perverted. It can slowly turn into control or codependency. We begin needing people more than serving them. And when they stop meeting our needs, this love can quickly turn into just disappointment, resentment, anger. Because so much of what we called that love was actually dependence. So in spiritual life, we learn to shift from this I love you, or I need you, therefore I love you, to I love you, therefore let me care for you. It's quite different. And this real affection is rooted in service. Attachment is rooted in need. It's two very different kinds of relating with people. Attachment versus affection. And sometimes we become so attached because most of us naturally relate to people on the material level. We connect because someone is attractive, or they make us laugh, or they make us feel understood. They enjoy the same hobbies. And there's nothing wrong with any of these things. But as we get into, but at the same time, just like we just talked about, all of these things are temporary. All of these things are going to change. Our bodies are going to change. Our personalities are going to mature. Our careers will change. Our interests will change. Even our health is changing. So if the relationship is built only on these temporary things, then eventually the relationship begins to feel unstable. And so as we get into spiritual life, we learn how to relate to people in a much deeper way. And our relationships all of a sudden become much deeper. We understand each person is an eternal soul. And behind every body, behind every personality, behind every success and failure, there's someone who's trying to find lasting happiness. Someone who is trying to reconnect with Krishna. And when we begin relating to this part of the person, this is when the relationship changes. Instead of asking, what can you do for me? We begin asking, how can I help you grow? How can we help each other become better? And this is a much stronger foundation for love. So the spiritual life, it changes the whole way that we relate to people, and it transforms our relationships. Our relationships stop becoming superficial when Krishna's at the center. And we can imagine it's our relationship with Krishna, our relationship with our higher power that enables us to show up to our other relationships more selflessly. Because we're getting so nourished from that relationship that all of a sudden our own cup is full and we can give from a full cup instead of trying to give from this depleted cup. And that's where we get into this cycle of like needing. I need you to make me feel secure. And it becomes a very perverted kind of relationship. So if we imagine a triangle, one point is you, one point is another person. Actually, let's do it. 1 point's you, 1 point's another person, and then we'll put Krishna at the top. Okay, so this relationship with Krishna gives us this inner stability. And it's this inner stability, again, that allows us to have a healthy relationship with everybody else. Because if our identity purely depends on our relationships with other people, our spouse, our children, our parents, then every disagreement just feels completely devastating. We just completely fall off. Every criticism is going to feel personal. Every disappointment is going to totally shake me. But when this relationship, when our vertical relationship is strong, our relationship with Krishna is very strong, and this is where we get our sense of security from. This is the identity that we're really connected to. I can still love deeply, I can still grieve, I can still celebrate, but I'm not going to fall apart every time someone doesn't meet my expectations on this horizontal realm, because my peace isn't resting on them anymore. I'm so connected vertically that these horizontal relationships aren't just constantly knocking me up and down. And in that way, I can actually show up for them in a real and selfless way. I can actually give from a full cup. I'm not looking to them to fill my cup. And then what happens when we start giving from a full cup? The relationships actually become much more healthy and reciprocal and much more fulfilling on their own right. And this is what, ironically, allows us to love much more freely. And sometimes people think that spiritual life means choosing between our vertical relationship and our horizontal relationships. And that's not really the goal. Our relationship, again, with Krishna should strengthen our family relationships. And our family relationships, our horizontal relationships, become opportunities to deepen our relationship with Krishna. The more we grow spiritually, the more patient we become, the more compassionate, the more humble, the more forgiving, all of these qualities that we're talking about. So, in other words, spiritual life should make us better spouses, children, friends, not worse ones. This is the proper orientation of things. This is the orientation of things that will set you up for success in your relationships and your peace of mind, and even your destination for the next life. And some people will say, okay, well, what if my horizontal relationships, what if they don't share my beliefs? Again, what if my spouse isn't interested in spiritual life? What if my family doesn't understand my practice? And the answer here is not to withdraw from them. It's to become an even better example of what spiritual life actually is, which is a life lived in humility, patience, kindness, tolerance, sensitivity. This is a spiritual life. People are rarely transformed because somebody argues them into spiritual life. They're transformed because they meet somebody who's genuinely changed, who actually imbibes these qualities. This is what transformed me when I met my guru. These qualities just like radiated from him. And it was like, I want what he has. And of course, there's rare situations where a relationship is openly hostile to someone's spiritual life. And that has to be handled delicately. This happened to Prahlad Maharaj. His father violently opposed his devotion. And the same thing happened to me when I told my dad the path I was following. He completely freaked out. It was brutal. Not the same thing. I shouldn't say the same thing. But my dad was very opposed. And we have to deal with that, in a healthy way. But these are generally the exception, not the rule. Most relationships don't require dramatic decisions. They require wisdom and patience and compassion. So the last thing I'll say around this before I want to open it up for some discussion is that ultimately this detachment, it doesn't mean irresponsibility. Some people hear that word and they think it means stepping away from responsibility, but Krishna never teaches that. Detachment, it doesn't mean neglect. It means freedom from unhealthy dependence. It means trading our expectations for appreciations. And there's a story from Prabhupada that I'd like to share. In the early days that the movement was being formed, there was such a strong emphasis on book distribution that some mothers were encouraged to, step into that service instead of caring for their children. And somebody wrote to Prabhupada about it. And he corrected immediately. He reminded everyone that children are gifts from God and that they should be cared for with love and responsibility. And at the same time, he didn't want anyone to feel that their only service was inside the home. There needed to be a balance. So this same principle applies to us. Spiritual life, it's not about abandoning our responsibilities. It's about performing them with the right consciousness. So the takeaway for us here, this is where we'll conclude with this last quality, is when Krishna tells us to give up attachment to family life, he's not asking us to become cold. He's asking us to become free. Free from making another person responsible for our happiness. Free from trying to control the people that we love. Free from confusing love with dependence. Again, because the healthiest relationships aren't built on, I need you. They're built on, I care for you. And when our relationship with Krishna, when our vertical relationship becomes the foundation of our life, this happens beautifully. We stop trying to possess the people that we love. And instead, we begin serving them, encouraging them, supporting them, helping them grow. This is the kind of love that Krishna wants for us all. Not a love that clings, but a love that liberates and inspires and uplifts. So what do you all think about that? Katie G, please share with us.
Hi, Krishna. I love the conversation about attachment and affection, and how, being less attached doesn't mean we're showing up less, or we're less loving, or less like fully engaged and performing is a weird word, but involved in that love. And it gave me a little memory of my grandma's funeral. And we were very close, and like best friends really. And I at one point I was going to do the next reading or section, so I was already seated up on the altar, and I was just like, like really crying, like freely, like full on crying. And whoever was kind of organizing, like, you're next, was sort of like, oh God, oh no, can you do this thing? And I was like, yeah. And because then it was time to stop doing that and share the section I was going to read. And I think she kind of was like surprised, that we can be so emotionally involved, and then also be ready to be a little more unattached, but that affection is still so big and so strong. So I think that's just nice that it's not like we have to give any of that up, and we really probably shouldn't,
Yeah. So nice. Such a nice connection, Katie. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Kripa Maya, do you have anything else for us?
Well, I just really appreciate these heartwarming words, because they really help me increase my stretch zone. And it reminded me of something that Giriraj Maharaj said, and that we don't get married to find happiness. We get married to be married. And when we're securely and safely married, we create a structure in which we can find our own happiness. And I felt that what you were saying was resonating with that expectation that circumstances are going to make me happy. We have our stretch zones, we have to be honest, but ultimately we come to that realization that circumstances, it's not dependent, my happiness is not dependent upon circumstances, but like you said, it's that vertical relationship with Krishna and seeing Krishna and everything horizontal.
Yeah, really nice. Thank you. I feel like so many relationships fail because we think that the point of marriage is to make us, you know, is our soul is our soul way of happiness. You know, it's instead of really understanding the the foundation, what it's really intended for. Not that we don't get happy, we should get happiness out of marriage, but when we think that that's our sole source of happiness, things we become troubled. Thank you. Anybody else?
Just
Pooja.
hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what you said, and I think on this level of emotional intelligence and maturity takes time to develop, right? You cannot expect
Mm.
um, someone in their 20s or 30s to have this kind of um, realization. I mean, it's good if they do, but I think it, at least from my perspective, this has all come through trial and errors, right?
Mm.
Because of course I had expectations from around people around me, and I realized that that didn't work. Going into social um, you know meetings and having a lot of friends together and having parties, and I realized that that didn't work. It didn't give me anything much. Maybe going out for a drink, that didn't work either, and I felt like anxious after that. So for me, this all came through trial and errors, that okay, maybe this is not what gives me happiness. And so I'm starting to, I'm not saying in any way I'm there, but I think the process has started because I tried different things and it didn't really satisfy my soul. And so, and the other thing I'll also point out, I think it's also very important to say that you got to be financially secure or have a good basis for yourself as well. Because if you don't, then again, the fear and the anxiety, these are all like the loop, that vicious cycle starts, right? Because what if I'm abandoned? What if I'm left all alone, you know, and what's going to happen to me? And so you got to also tie into your sort of financial independence, or that if nothing works, everybody abandons me, I'm all alone tomorrow, I'll still
Mm.
be okay.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Beautiful reflections. Thank you, Pooja. I think that most of us on this call can relate about trying, like just kind of having, just figuring it out, trial and error, trying things that you think will make you happy and then they don't. And just getting a little bit curious about the world and the whole purpose of it. So thank you. And then the second part about having to have some level of stability to have a peaceful mind to even endeavor for those life's deeper questions. You know, if I'm worried about the next meal that I'm going to eat, I'm certainly not going to be contemplating the purpose of life. And so there's definitely an importance around that. I felt that immediately when I got married. I had a good job. I was supporting myself, but when I got married, I felt like a sense of like security that I hadn't ever felt before. Like, oh, someone's here for me all the time. My guru actually told me that. He's like, your husband loves you unconditionally. And I was like, whoa, I don't even know what that means. But it provides a level of security so that our minds can be peaceful and we can actually endeavor for these higher realities and truths. So I 100% agree. It's that it's important to try to get into a peaceful situation, stable situation, and that might look different for all of us. It will look different for all of us. But yeah, thank you. Let's hear from Kalachandji and Stella, and then Shakti. Your hand was up too, dear, right?
Thank you. There's so much food for thought. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate what Pooja just said about, it being trial and error. And I would, you know, I agree. And I would say that it's a trial and error that never ends. It's just a continuing journey. It's not like all of a sudden, at least in my perception, that one day it just clicks, and then from then on you're smooth sailing. It's something that you keep on. It keeps happening. In your journey together, in one's journey together. So many things. A side thought about parents, that sometimes they or friends or anyone in our lives, they may not accept where we're going at first. They might really reject it. And sometimes I think time, you know, one just has to keep, they have to see that we are still who we are, that we're not only are we still ourselves, but like we're even more ourselves, that Krishna consciousness like really enables that. And over time, I think sometimes if they see that, their feelings can soften. I know that that has happened in our case quite a bit, and it took years and years. And finally, if I could, one more, as you were, Radha, going through that list of attachments and from attachment to affection, that also all of this led to a lot of self-reflection. And so every time you said something, I'm like, well, do I do that? Do I do this? Um, and one that you mentioned in attachment, I feel like my happiness is very dependent on my wife's happiness. There's no way I just can't be happy if she's not happy. And I'm not sure what to do with that. And I'm not sure it'll ever change.
It could be just that. I mean, that's how you really serve someone else because you're trying to make them comfortable and happy. I mean, love is service. So, I mean, if you really serve somebody, you are, you do really care whether they're happy. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like your motivation to serve, right? You want, because you love them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, what Kripamaya pointed out from Giriraj Swami, he just spoke that the other day.
Uh-huh.
And the other two things he said at the end of his talk were that the basic the key to loving relationships is which was give more than you get and to keep Krishna at the center. And if those two things are happening, it will be okay. So I'm sorry, that was a lot, but thank you.
No, that was beautiful.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
just love your guys' love. And that's an example of, a healthy relationship when you give your heart to somebody who also has God at the center of your life, it actually will bring you higher. And I think the problem is a lot of us give our hearts to people that don't quite have that level of maturity, and it brings us lower. But yeah, service when the relationship is centered on Krishna, it's perfect
Yeah, it's
by material
connecting.
standards.
I mean, we connect through our bodies just in terms of, close kinship or, the whole marriage thing, but it's actually if you should get married, like on a soul level, not a body level, like to serve each other's, growth of the soul rather than loving just, the bodily stuff.
Mhm.
And one doesn't lose oneself in that process. I feel like I'm
No,
more myself than ever.
it's true. Yeah.
Hmm.
You're free to be yourself because
Thank
you
you.
love unconditionally. So there's no condition. So you can be yourself.
Yeah,
Thank you very
very
much for
sweet.
class. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And Shakti and George, do you want to take us home here?
So, I mean, similar to what Kalachandra was saying, I think that the it's a journey, right? And when life is lifing, it's not a straight line, right? it's this, all right? Life is like that's cool, like how it zoomed.
It did to zoom in on
Right?
Shakti.
That's so weird. Where'd I go? Where am I?
That's
Oh, there I
funny.
am. Wait, where am I? Okay,
There you are. There you are.
No, I just think like today, like the conversations today and the what people are sharing, it's relationships are not easy, right? Life comes with its own challenges, and I think as we go through the ups and downs together, and I think at the root of it all, if you're supportive of each other and each other's journey, and realizing that yes, we all are on our own journeys, and we're on those journeys together. However, each one of us as individuals, we've got our own personal journeys as well. But it is, I think it comes, the root of it all is the support. When you support each other unconditionally, I think that's a key thing there, right?
Beautiful. Thank you. Coming from another very, very supportive husband. Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming and for spending your Thursday morning with us. And we'll meet again on Monday and continue making our way through this list, being transformed together, uplifted together, because we need each other. We need each other in this journey. So thank you. Thanks for being a part of it. And I'll see you all on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you.